Hey,
Hey,
good
good
morning,
morning,
Brett.
Brett.
How
How
are
are
you
you doing
doing
today?
today?
Doing well, Jim.
Well,
Well, it's an interesting day out here. It's nice and sunny here in California, but on the East Coast, back home in New York, I'm hearing about all kinds of snow. Gotta tell you, I don't miss it anymore.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you. I recently moved from Chicago down to Charlotte, North Carolina. We're getting a lot of rain, but not the white stuff coming up. So I don't blame you.
I want to welcome you to Jim Talk Moments, our new show, Jim Talk Moments in Leadership, where we're going to be interviewing different leaders every week on Thursday mornings. So, everybody out there, bring your cup of coffee with you, or your cup of tea, your water, whatever your morning beverages. Come talk to us and listen and get insight on real life leaders. I'm your host, Jim Saliba. I am an executive leadership coach, and I help executives transform with purpose. Um, Brett, tell us. We talk about leadership, and leadership has been something out there forever. There are so many books about it. There's so many papers. Everybody has their own ideas, and I even see two books there behind you. Tell me, in your way of thinking, what is leadership to you?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And excited to be here. So thanks for having me. Yeah, what does leadership mean to me? In the simplest form, especially from a business sense, leadership means that people want to follow you. And in the business world, that might be considered manager, black and white definition, team leader, but really you have the ability to lead, and people want to hear what you have to say or see that they can be influenced by you and your actions.
Mhm.
um, so leadership, we're going to talk about the evolution of it, especially from my experience over time, but I truly, from a very simple standpoint, is leadership is the ability to lead a group of people, a group of actions, a group of change, whatever that may be.
Right. Um, Actually, I forgot, Brett. I didn't allow you to introduce yourself. So let's back up a minute and tell us about yourself.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Brett Fritz, as I mentioned briefly, I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina. But I am the president and founder of a sales and marketing consulting firm called Two Ones. Been running Two Ones for a couple of years now, working with some great clients. And Jim, I've gotten to know you over the last couple of months. Read your book, great book. So really enjoy the conversation that we've been having. I'm excited to be here today. So, Jim, thanks.
Great. I thank you for plugging my book. Thanks a lot.
I'm sorry I don't have it behind me. I don't have it up, but I do have a copy of your book.
Actually, it's over here. So yeah. Um, but to return to favor, tell us about your company, Two Ones, and what are you working on now?
Yeah, so we're sales and marketing, big data analysis. Our ideal client is working with really a couple different types of businesses. So it might be a startup that is just getting started in the world of offering products and services. So they need help setting up process for sales, marketing, business development, understanding their data, things around that. And then also we work with companies that have just hit those plateaus. Maybe they've been around for 10, 20, 30 years. They just can't seem to break through to the next level of sales, of revenue, of marketability. That's where me and the team come in and help get to the next level. So yeah, we've got some fun clients that we're working with. We're really excited about what 2021 for us and the work we're doing.
Great, great. So we talked about leadership a little bit and what it meant to you, and that it could be a team or not a team. Would you like to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, it's leadership is for me, it's evolved quite a bit. So I still consider myself a young professional, but I've been in the working space now for gosh, almost 20 years. And before that, in college, I was a college athlete. I played basketball. that was really my first foray to sports. Was my first foray into leadership, because I was honored with the ability to be captain of the team and lead the team. So it's not like they were, business environment. They were subordinates to me in any way, or they reported to me. But I was the face, and I was one of a few captains on the team. And so that was the first time I ever got to really experience being a leader. Gosh, if I think back to then to now, sales teams and marketing teams, having that leadership honor bestowed upon me, it really evolved quite a bit. So I'd love to share some stories if it makes sense to do so. But yeah, I think the big takeaway for me, leadership in general, as we talked about, is being able to give something that people want to follow and be a part of. But at the same time, I think it's not a black and white definition. A leader can be so many different people depending on where you're at in your life cycle, your personal life, your professional life, work, your community service that you give, whatever it may be. Leadership can really be a different definition.
Right. When I think of leadership and how I started, I originally thought of leadership in the business sense of having a team. And that started for me way back when I was working for Computer Associates. And all of a sudden, I went from being an individual contributor to having 3 sets of teams, each that had a manager. So I had managers of teams working for me. So it was a big jump, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Of course, at first, scared the pants off of me of how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to handle it, and that's a whole other story. But as I grew in my career, I became into more of the strategy of the organization, where I no longer had a big team. I've had teams of hundreds of people, and then all of a sudden I had a team of basically no one. I was part of a team for the corporate strategy. But I had much more influence across the whole organization. And as I grow in different areas and as a coach, I think it's the word influence. If I had to boil it down to one word, it would be that. Leadership is all about influencing people to move in some direction.
I completely agree. I remember the first time in my career I was given a team. Really fun. Oh, I wanted to be the man. I wanted to run a sales. And finally, my boss at the time said, "Okay, here you go. You can have a small budget, small team," and off we went. And influence is such a key word, because the way I believe you're defining it is, you're influencing your team to all move in the same direction, to be successful, to make progress, whatever it was. At the time, for me though, I was trying to influence those that were outside of my team to see that I was the one that. And now I know that was completely backwards of what a true leader should be. So every time my team would do something, I was saying, "Look at me, look at me, look at the success that I did." And I was trying to promote myself, which is such a wrong way to be a leader, in my opinion. I now am able to see, like, if I'm running a team or working with clients, it's not about the ego of me. It shouldn't be. I think the best leaders out there are those that are surrounding themselves with better leaders and smarter people, and going, to the great lengths of being successful out there. But that's not how it started with me. I thought that being a leader meant a manager. That's going to make me a leader, and all of a sudden I'm going to be successful. And what I quickly learned was that I was pointing myself, the fingers at me, and if there were mistakes that happened, then I would say, "Oh, it wasn't my fault. It was someone else's fault." And that was just such a horrible way for me to be a leader. So I had to take a step back, kind of reevaluate how I could be a better servant, if you will.
Well, that's interesting. There is a quote out there. I forget who it's from. who said, as an individual contributor, you're focused on your success. As a leader, you're focusing on the team's success. So
Yeah.
that was a great example
Yeah.
of that. So you talked about a little bit how your thoughts of leadership changed. Um, how have you changed or evolved over the years?
Yeah. So in general, the magnitude of weight, again, from starting with that inward me to switching it to a we, it's the team that was successful, really promoting and highlighting the success of the team. And I like to remind people, and we were all designed with typically the same anatomy of 2 ears and one mouth. When I first started leading teams, it typically was I was doing a lot more talking than I was listening. And someone, an early mentor in my career, said, "Hey, 2 ears, one mouth, use that ratio appropriately." And that really changed the way I started to lead with those around me, both in my family life, personal life, my friends, and also my professional life with my career. So that was really a big shift for me. Was learning to listen more than talk, and really absorb and understand what is being said, and then not just listening to respond, but listening to
Right.
actually understand, have a thoughtful response.
I know when I became a leader in that example, a manager of managers, um, I decided that I wanted to do it well. I wanted to be good at it. I started reading lots of books. I started going out and taking some courses. And actually, that was a point in my life that I went back to school and got an MBA. And I spent hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours trying things, experimenting, really had a hunger to learn and try things out. And often I told my team or my peers of, I just read about this or I was been thinking about this. I like to run a little experiment. Let's try this out.
Mm.
Um, and kind of was open about not knowing everything and not saying, "Oh, we're going to do this because it's going to be great and it's going to be awesome." But I pitched it as an experiment um, to kind of grow the idea of learning beyond me, to scale learning throughout my team. Um, what types of things have you tried or done through your life as a leader?
Yeah, reading. I love to read books, so I think that it's just a continuous learning cycle, believing and knowing and understanding that you don't know everything. Always learn to strive to be better and improve. So reading books, I try to get a couple books in a month that I can just skim through and understand, and then really dig into some core principles there. And if I really like a book, I'll keep it and I'll read it a couple times over.
Mhm.
If I said, "It's a good book," I'll pass it on to someone else.
Right.
And onto this. But I think reading books is a great one. I think also, as you mentioned, it's just being able to try to learn new things and try different experiments. I remember my first ever sales meeting that I ran on that first team way back then. Gosh, I thought I had this process. I thought I had the deliverables. I thought I had the messaging I was going to give to my
Mhm.
team. And then something just threw me off. I can't remember what it was, but a comment was made, a question was made, and I didn't know the answer. And I got beat red in the face. I started sweating, and I just felt like I was failing because I wasn't running the meeting properly. But through time and experiments of how to run meetings, how to be a leader, how to address obstacles. There's no right or wrong way to do it, but just being able to try different methods
Mhm.
has really helped me improve over time. And asking for help, I think that's a key one as well. When I was young in my career, being a leader in the business world, I was stubborn. I didn't want to ask for help. I felt like if I asked for help, it was going to represent failure in some
Mhm.
capacity to my boss. And instead, I have learned now that asking for help does not show weakness or failure. It actually truly just means that you need to be improving and you're looking for advice. So asking for help is what I do quite often.
Oh boy, I 100% agree with that. I see it all the time. I've been in technology, software my entire career, and I see all the time people who were great programmers. That's how I started. Move up to be a tech lead, and they did a great job there, still with the technology. Then they moved up to be a manager. And that became a problem because they weren't trained to be a manager, and it's a completely different skill set than what we were doing before, the technology part of it. But we have in our head, I'm here because I know what I'm doing. I did well. So you team must do it the exact same way I do it because that's success. And micromanaging kind of often comes out of that. And then I see their manager for a while, and it becomes time to move them up to a director because a space opened up, somebody left, and oh, Brett is doing good as a manager. Let's just move him up. And they can't ask for help. They're stepping into a place where fear kind of dives in, but they can't see to ask for help because they, as you said, they're concerned that it will be seen as a failure. But this is the time when they need the most mentoring, the most coaching in their life. So for me, I definitely hit those fears. Luckily for me, at that time, I was doing a lot of reading, a lot of learning. I was talking to people. I was going to networking. So when I talked about my experience and like, I'm afraid to move forward. I feel like I'm an imposter, the imposter syndrome, and all that came out. But I had an outlet to go talk to people. And that's what really helped me move forward.
I think that's key. Is you mentioned right being at an outlet. And so I think far too often people don't ask for help. They get stuck. They're in that rut, and they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know where to go. But even just having a peer group or having mentors or just people that are not in your industry, not in your career, not in your business world, that you can go talk to and confide in, I think is so important, right? And the learning that you're going to have between those, the struggles that two people are facing or multiple people are facing. Hey, have you tried this? Have you done that? Or I just experienced the same thing yesterday. Wow, this made me feel like that. It can be a vulnerable discussion to have that with your peer groups, but if you can get through the concerns about the vulnerability, I think there's just powerful messages that can be taught and learnings out of it for sure.
So we're talking about different things that we have done to help evolve us. Are there any habits or strategies that you keep in your life to help move and evolve your leadership with your company and your clients?
Yeah, there's one common thread that I find that I continuously use when I'm talking to clients, talking to peers around me, and it's that I relate non-business activities that people would most likely understand. I relate them to business terms. And I'm a sports guy. I play basketball, I like hiking, I like play sports with my kids. So I a lot of times will use those analogies in the business world. I'll talk about how on a basketball team you've got teams and you've got positions, and everyone has to know their role. Just like in the business world, you need to know your role for a presentation or for a project that's worked on. Doesn't mean that your role is any less important than someone else that takes a larger front and center role. But just like in the basketball or sports world, and like just because someone made all the points, someone's got to pass that person the ball. Someone's got to get the rebound. Someone's got to play defense. And collectively, the team wins. I use a lot of sports analogies to tie everything together, and try to avoid just buzzwords and acronyms that people don't understand, because again, from a vulnerable standpoint, those people in the world of business, sometimes they don't know what's going on. They don't know what a certain term means, or what you meant by saying a certain thing a certain way, because it's just not a familiar term to them. But they may be too shy to speak up and say, "Hey, I don't know what that means." Instead, just be yourself, be a human, and don't use all these big words, and talk normal, just like you would to a friend or a colleague. So those are common threads that I use, and I think they're successful. They've been successful for me, but I'd love to hear if you have any others that you found to be successful out there as well.
I love what you talked about. I think being a great communicator is a key part for a leader. Being able to communicate powerfully, but simply at the same time, is a skill every leader, I believe, should have. People have a short attention spans. We can't go into long details. So how do we grab the audience attention and quick, short, get our information across quickly? Analogies are a great way to do that. And if there's more questions, then there could be more questions and we can dig in more. This all kind of evolves around what we call executive presence, right? So I think that whole presence part is very important. But other components that you talked about there is being yourself. That being level of transparency, I think, and authenticity is important for a leader. Often I talk to people and I say, if you feel like you have to put on this invisible shield of armor before you walk into a meeting, this probably is not being transparent, right? This is not the right thing. So that transparency, authenticity, and communication, I think, is extremely important. But it's not just about that. I think a leader, there's many pieces to it. I have this quadrant thing that you and I have talked about having a vision and a strategy to get people there. How do we execute? That's the whole operational side. But there's a whole people side to it. How do I build my corporate culture to be aligned with the values of the company that I want to get across? And then executive presence. I think those are all important pieces. We're kind of getting down to our last 5 to 7 minutes here. So I kind of like to take this time for whatever final thoughts you would like to talk about.
Yeah, final thoughts. So the topic for today is the evolving or evolution of style. I know for me, first became a leader, if you want to kind of think about what that means of, putting a title on it. I felt like leadership was a very finite definition, meant something very specific. And my final thought would be that as if you're just starting to become a leader or feel like you have leadership qualities, don't put yourself in a box. Don't define that leadership in a box, because for me, it meant leader meant manager equals success. And that's far from the truth of what leadership title, journey, capabilities now means for me. And so don't put that definition in a box. Be broad in the sense of understanding that leadership, as you mentioned, be just influence over people, decisions, thoughts, feelings. But leadership can also be a very servant type of understanding. Or in the background, you don't have to be front and center. Professional life, personal life. So I think that's my final thought. In a very summarized answer, don't put the definition of leadership in a small little box of knowing what it is. Be broad. be okay to ask questions, have a definition that's very personal to you.
Right. I like the concept of servant leadership. That is something that more and more books are coming out about. And when I think about people growing in their leadership at all different levels, even at a CEO, a leader is still learning and growing. I would kind of put three things into place to discuss that is one, stay hungry to learn, be curious how to do things differently and change. That's not just leading a company, that's leading anything. Life changes, we try things, so that hunger to learn, I think, is extremely important for a leader. Second, as we grow, and we mentioned this a couple of times, as we grow in different parts of our leadership, fear comes in different ways, and it just can be a roadblock so many times. So pushing through that fear and anxiety is very important. In fact, I was talking to a client last week, and he said he often uses fear as guidance of what he has to do, rather than staying away from it. It's no, I have to do this, right? There's a reason why I'm afraid of it. It's the right thing, and I need to push through it. So I thought that was an interesting insight. And the third thing is, don't do it alone. And we talked about this a few times as well. Doing it alone, you can push through it. You can learn. It will take longer. There are so many avenues out there that you can get help and network and talk and discuss. Of course, for me, I would love you to come as an executive coach. I'd love you to go that route, but there are many ways out there. So that's all I have for today. Brett, I really want to thank you for coming on and talking to us. You're the founder and president of 2-1's Sales and Marketing Consulting. I highly recommend Brett. I've used him for some of my stuff as well. Go out there and find him and really grow your leadership. Thank you very much.